Good morning everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, this channel is all about Unreal Engine and photogrammetry. So what I do is I travel around the world, I do a lot of photo scanning, and then I bring those models into Unreal Engine and build environments from it. Eventually I will sell it on the Fab store. For this project I went to the Fanal Forest in Madeira, which truly is one of the most magical places on this planet. There I scanned around 30 trees. I'm now making a tutorial series where I'm going to show you everything that goes into creating these assets from beginning to the end. In this episode, I'm going to dive deeper into 3DCoat's modeling tools. We're going to take a really close look at how to add detail and do some fine sculpting. Today, I wanted to show you some more sculpting tools, so I thought I'd show you the tools that I use from the Clay engine and a few other tools down the list here. So this is the final result. This is when I've gone through everything I need to sculpt for the tree and I'm ready to bring it in to Houdini for the final stuff. Well, I got to do the UVs and all that kind of stuff. So in the previous episode, I did in Houdini all of these little branches here and made a mesh out of them and imported them into 3DCoat for the sculpting. So in this video, I will show you how I, first of all, import them, convert them to volumes, and then we start sculpting and blending it in and what kind of results we get. And eventually this will go back into Houdini. But without further ado, let's start sculpting. So what I am going to do, I'm going to turn this one into voxels here. Let's turn off the bottom there. This one is still divided into two parts here, so I got the top and the bottom. So if I select it and click, I will get the converter. So let's type in 5 million here. That will ensure me that it's going to save all the tiny details of the branches so it doesn't get eaten up. Because voxels have this tendency where it can, if you don't have enough resolution, you will create gaps in the mesh. And we don't want that. Also, what I'm going to do, I'm going to subdivide it 2 times. Normally, I wouldn't do this, but for branches like this, it will help with the faceting, or else you're going to see every little polygon in the mesh there, so we don't want that. And then just click OK. Subdivide 2 times. Click OK. And it's done. They're now all in volumes. And they are now all looking good as well. I'm just going to see so I nailed the resolution. They all look complete. No gaps in the mesh there whatsoever. That means if I select the top one here, I can right click, merge visible. And that will turn them into one big mesh that I can sculpt. So if I turn these 2 off, the branches should now be there. So these 2 you can of course delete at some point. So let's get to it. Let's start sculpting. So we are going to use the clay tools. So I got the base clay and the wet clay. It's the ones that I'm probably going to use the most for this. So let's zoom in on something that we can start with. Let's do this one here. So of course, when it comes to getting rid of these edges here, you can smooth it, holding down shift would take care of business. Or now I have the clay, base clay selected, so I can just start sculpting and we will have no more seams. So this is how I'm going to have to do it for all of these things. So it's a very manual process and it will take some time. But you have to remember these are hero trees. So we'll try to make them as good as we possibly can. So for this, I think the base clay is going to be the best one. So I'm going to keep doing this for quite a bit. It will take me a solid couple of hours, maybe a cup of coffee or 2. I've been doing quite a lot of sculpting. I'm getting close to the end, but I thought I'd show you a couple of techniques and a couple of brushes that I would use in certain situations. So let's see, let's go up here for instance, in one of the thinner branches. Now you can see these are quite thin and they're going to be a little bit problematic to UV unwrap, so I would like to add some thickness to it. But if you use something like the base clay, Now this comes with a bit of a built-in smooth, and sometimes it works fine. You can just add a little bit of girth to it. But sometimes this little extra smooth function it has will instead start eating into the mesh. So what you can use is the usual clay, works quite fine for this. It doesn't have that smooth operation, so whatever you are painting on top is going to be added on top. So that's one good thing to do. And you also have a thing like this. You got the thick layer. Now that's just going to add like a little strip of thickness to it, which can also be quite useful in these situations. A little bit hard to control. Anyways, other things that are quite useful. Let's see if I go down to here, for instance. Let's check this one. So this one ends quite abruptly. So either I could kind of sculpt in a taper here, just try to remove this. Or if I need to, 3DCoat has got some excellent curve tools. And if I choose that, the curves, see how these works. So it comes with an automatic snapping function already. So I only need to click on the top there and I get a little ring and then click further out to continue the curve. And then of course I can go in and move these around as I want. If I want it a little bit further down. And if I want to scale it, you got the tools here where I can just press E. And now this one will be a scale function instead. So these curve tools are really smooth and quite powerful. It's just that if you want to do all of these with this curve tool, it works, but it could be a little bit, take a bit too long because it's so hard to move these around in 2D space. It's really hard to see where the curve is going. But for a few extra things like this, it's just perfect, where you just want to get the taper in. Something like that. And then just hit enter and we'll create a bit of a volume there and ask to clear the curve so you can start a new one. So these are tools that I use all the time as well. Before I'm done, I still need to go in and remove all the things that are protruding and that doesn't look right here. So this is where things get a little bit gnarly. You have to navigate in to these little nooks and crevices. And here I use a mixture of all the tools that I have. Mostly it would be just the smooth tool and the wet clay brush. That would get all of this stuff away. So I'm just going to even out all of this. And you can see there's lots of these faceted polygon structures here. And all of this needs to be removed. Now this is a scenario where I can't imagine how I would do it in any other program when I get this kind of a mess in here. Would be very complicated to remove if I couldn't just melt it away like this. And like I did before, I have to go over the mesh here and just easily, with the low opacity of the wet clay brush, I'm getting rid of the tops that are sticking out. Just ever so carefully melting it away with. As you can see, I'm getting pretty close to the end now. So I got all the branches in here. They're kind of sculpted in nicely. And I've done some polish to get rid of everything that's protruding out. And all the tiny little holes are also gone now. The only thing I have left now is to bring back some detail in these large areas here. I also have areas inside here that are kind of smoothed out. And we're going to need some bumpiness back in there, or else it's going to stick out way too much. In order to do that, I will use this Vox extrude here. So this will be like you have in ZBrush, where you will drag out your alphas. So let's see what it does. I need a nice alpha. Let's see this one. Well, let's try this one. I have a few here I can choose from. These are just your average bumpy alphas. And in order to get this to work, we need can choose either from a drag dot or a stamp. So this one will function like the one you have in ZBrush, where you can kind of drag it out and place it like this. Now, there is a thing where the Vox extrude in the Clay engine is a little bit odd, to be honest. So you can see I have a depth of 1000 here. So that's kind of an odd number. And sometimes you have to go up to like 2000 or 3000 in order for this one to have an effect. You can also see if I make it small, it's bigger, or it has more of an impact. And as I drag it out, the weaker it gets. So that's how that one works there, and it's not quite accurate because these are VDM maps, so these have like a 3D information in them, but it doesn't quite work with Vox Extrude. In order to get the full effect of a VDM map, to drag it out, you have to go down to the surface. And if you use that, let's see, where is the extrude? You will get more of a classic extrusion. So now it's in surface mode, and then you can set the depth to 100%, and that is going to, let's choose this one for instance, and you get the drag rect. So at 100% it's going to represent the VDM map that you've chosen as it should be. So if I drag this one out now, you can see I get much more of an effect there. Let's try something else. So you can see it kind of really pokes out. I think if I choose another one here, I have rocks. These ones will illustrate quite good. Let's try this one. So these are some VDM stones that I have. I'm not going to use them here. But here you can see you get the full effect then. So that's what you use if you want to get the 100% effect. But for this, I prefer to use the Vox Extrude, because I just need a little bit of a bump map. So I don't care about getting the exact shapes in at this point. So I'm just going to undo this. So how I handle these edges here is I tend to, you can see here I've done a bit of a smoothing, and I also try to taper them down a little bit, because I don't like when you got things that are kind of sticking up in the wrong direction. It becomes very hard to place then. So I always try to sculpt them down a little bit like this, so it has a slope down, just makes them easier to place. And then I do smooth it out and then just add in a tiny bump like this, because I don't want it like super bumpy all the way to the edge, because usually you're going to pull it down into the ground anyways. So I think that just looks better and becomes easier to handle as well. So I'm just going to do this, drag it out wherever I can, wherever it fits. Let's see, I go in here, for instance. It's always tricky to get into these places, but you can see. So it's a bit of an operation to do this, of course, but will soon be finished. So all the areas that I have erased before, I'm going to add in some kind of a bump map, bumpiness. Now there are quite a few other tools that I like to use as well, and let's zoom into these little thin strands here. If I push the F, we shoot out the pivot point, so I always got it where I want it. Now you can see this one here, it's pretty thin. So when I go out from volume mode into surface mode, I'm pretty sure this is not going to get a good representation. Probably going to get kind of a hole here. So I need to make it thicker. And I showed you a few other things before, but there are more. So you can go down to the surface tools here. So what the surface tools do, they will quickly convert this to a surface representation of the volume. And then you can do these operations. Now, I don't know to which extent these surface tools are damaging, converting it back and forth. It usually seems okay to me, but I would still like to play it safe. So what I do, if you notice that it changes too much, you can just take this one and make a duplicate of it before you start, then hide it away. Because since it's voxels, it's super easy to just cut out the core and then blend it together with the other stuff here, in case you feel that you lose too much detail around the important area here. Because at the moment, I just want to work on these branches. So let's go back to that, the original, hide that as a safety. So the surface tools. So there are a few of them that I like to use. And one of them would be the inflate. So this is good for thin branches like this one. So if I just go over, you can see it does what you expect to do. It's going to balloon up in all directions. So you kind of add thickness to this one. Now you might also see when I go too hard with this, it's kind of going to curl in on itself. That's the nature of these balloon tools. They always do that. But in this case, it's still going to be okay because we're going to convert it back to volumes. So we're not going to get any screwed up geometry here. If this was in surface mode, I couldn't allow it to look like this, where you can see it kind of overlapping inside of each other. It's not what I want. But let's say I do one of these here, make it a little bit thick and make it curve in on itself. And then in order to go back, I can just choose another tool, a clay engine tool here. And then you can see it's now back into volumetrics. And all of those curving things are now gone. So you don't really have to worry about that. And then I kind of want just sculpt a little bit on top of it if it still looks a little bit crazy. But like I said, you have to be a little bit careful with that so you don't lose detail. I haven't lost any detail yet doing it just a couple of times back and forth, but let's say you do it like switching hundreds of times. Maybe something happens and it could be good to just have something saved either on disk or on the side here. I just want to say that. But there are other tools here as well that I like to use. So let's see. I got a few of these branches here that I think is a little bit too straight. So let's see if we can't bend them. So let's see. Well, let's just take this one as an example. So I shoot out the F. And there it is. So if I tap on this one, I have further down. Now I am looking for the pose tool. So this one is quite handy as well. So what we get, it's now going to jump into a surface again. If I drag a little bit like this, see there's like a red arrow. And now I get this representation here. Now sometimes it will end up nicely there in the, this is where it's supposed to be. But for some reason it sometimes ends up a little bit way too far in. But you can easily fix that by just going to pick pivot and we put it there. Because what I want to do now is, of course, I want to be able to pose this so I can turn it like this. So this is extremely powerful. I can just do all kinds of scale things and stuff. But let's say I have one branch here that I just feel is a little bit too straight, and I want to just pose it in place. Now I have noticed sometimes it can become a little bit funky, so every time you do this you have to be a little bit careful, just check that everything is all right. So I've seen that sometimes I could get some doubling up of the meshes. There are some polygons that looks a little bit odd, but most of the time it's fine. But 3DCoat is a very powerful program, but there are issues every now and then. It pays off to save often and be careful. So you can see here how nice and powerful this is. There we have it. It's done. I have finished all the sculpting, and I'm not going to lie, it is quite hard work. It takes a long time, especially if you're a bit pedantic. You want everything to look as good as it possibly can. It does take a few hours, actually. So, but you have to keep in mind, this is a hero tree. I wouldn't treat every other generic tree with this amount of detail. So here I really wanted to get as close as possible to the original Fanal Forest tree that you see out in the wild. So that's why I use this approach and not something like Speed Tree, which would generate the twigs and branches a lot faster. But I do use a Speed Tree for other things, a lot in production and that kind of thing. So that's another viable approach. But for this, I prefer to do it in this hard way here. And the results are nicer, and I can get everything in there just the way I want. But we're far from over. There's quite a few more steps to go. Next time we'll be adding the leaves and the twigs and some foliage around the trunk. So stay tuned for that. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you around next time.